Welcome to the Bigfoot Society. In this episode, I talked to Tim about the strange things that have been going on in his property near Lake Cushman, Washington, and also talked to Lizzy and Steven about the Bigfoot-related experiences they've had in northern New York and the Black Hills of South Dakota. If you've experienced something similar or have more information about cryptids in the same areas, please reach out to me immediately after this episode at bigfootsociety@gmail.com.
Hello.
Hey, Tim. I didn't have it plugged in. That'll do it.
Okay,
right?
all good.
So
all good.
I'm going to wait a minute. Okay, we hear him. We get plugging it in works. Okay. I'll let you start from the beginning, and I apologize again. Go right ahead, Tim.
Sure. No problem. So basically, we have a property. It's a camping property off-grid on the Olympic Peninsula. And this property, we've been experiencing all kinds of things, basically audio things from what I assumed for a long time were possibly Sasquatch. And I got confirmation last weekend. In the past, we've heard howls, roars, wood knocks. Last summer, I was cooking oysters over the fire and had pine cones thrown at me. And again, this property borders a green belt that is an unbroken forest all the way into Olympic National Park. So you can imagine we have bear scat. My brother's seen 2 cougars around. It's wild. It's a wild area. So last week, surprise, we went camping and there's 4 to 5 inches of snow on the ground. I had no idea, but we set up camp. And I said, let's go down in the ravine back there and just kind of see if we can find some tracks of whatever's been about. So we get down there and there's no human boot tracks at all, but there's weird tracks. And they are 4 inches round, kind of just like something has been punching its fist into the snow. And followed him for a while. Deer tracks mixed with these weird, like fist bump tracks. And finally snooped around way off trail and found what can clearly be an adult Bigfoot track with a juvenile print inside of that track. Really excited. I'd like to share a photo with you to check it out. It's something I'm really thrilled about. So that's my story.
That's awesome. Thank you for sharing. Definitely. Do you mind if I ask some questions? And guys, everyone that's listening live, if you have questions, I mean, this is a live show. Feel free to put them in the chat. Definitely. So let's see. So you've heard some interesting audio. Have you gotten to record any of the audio?
It's weird. I've tried, and 2 things happen. Either when I hit record, the playback is gone. It's fuzzy. It's weird. Or the minute I hit record on audio, whatever the creature is just totally stops. So no, unfortunately, I haven't had the opportunity to record the audio, but we heard in February, we camped out there and we heard a siren howl, which shocked my girlfriend because she doesn't know about this stuff at all. So she thought it was a siren, and then it turned into a howl, and then the dogs in the area started just going berserk. So along with wood knocks, the 4th of July was a really wild time last year because there were 2 fireworks shows on the Hood Canal, which is about 6 miles away. And so our area's up above the foothills above Hood Canal. So all kinds of wildlife came into the area. We heard coyotes and just all kinds of weird noises. Wish we would have recorded a lot of it. But that's when I got the pine cone thrown at me too.
Have you reached out to anyone in your area of the Olympic Peninsula, like any researchers or anyone like that, about what you've experienced so far?
No, you are the first.
Okay. Wow. Well, thank you for reaching out. So you're saying the Hood Canal area?
Yeah, it's Lake Cushman. It's above the Hood Canal in the foothills, about 600 feet elevation. Yeah.
All right. Well, I know that I think the Olympic Project guys are on the east side or the west side of Olympic National Park. But man, there's a question from the chat here that's interesting. Vincent says, well, he's kind of laughing a little bit. He says, why would you follow him? But it's a solid question, though. Like, what would happen, like, if you're following the tracks and there's actually something, like, did you ever think about what you would do in that situation if you had come across an actual creature?
Yeah. I guess I can be naive sometimes and overly excited. I don't know. I really don't know what would happen, but they're there. They're 200 yards from where we camp, where we set up our tent. So it's definitely something I'm milling over right now. I think that based on what I've learned about their behavior, they're as curious as we are. And as long as you don't kind of cross boundaries with them, I think, well, I don't know. I don't know. It's wild. It's really wild.
Well, it's a weird thing because there hasn't been one that we can actually study yet, right, in captivity or anything like that. So it's pretty much like there's no guidebook to follow.
Precedent, yeah.
I want to look up something real quick. Have you looked to see if there are other sightings that have taken place around the same area anywhere?
Oh, yeah. It's on the BFRO. There are literally 2 or 3 reports there. So Dow Creek is the area that we have a property in. And that's actually been mentioned on Sasquatch Chronicles and A Flash of Beauty. So they're there. It's definitely not uncommon in that area. So dare I say hotspot, but
absolutely. I mean, well, if it's in multiple places like that, and you're saying Lake Cushman, I see Dow Creek here, and looking up Mason County, Washington, real quick on BFRO. Yeah, I can see multiple campers at Lake Cushman, vocalization heard near Lake Cushman. It's Lake Cushman is all over the place on this page. So, I mean, that alone tells me, you probably have something going on. Have you thought of maybe setting up like a game camera or some kind of like audio recorder around your property?
Yeah, I think we'll set one of those up at the perimeter of our property. I definitely don't want to set one up in the green belt where we found the prints, because I just feel like there's some kind of violation of something territorially about doing that. And I do have to share, I touched the print itself. It had such a graceful shape to it. And it's unmistakably not a human print, because that ridge that we have on the side, the outer part of our foot, that ridge wasn't there. It was an arch that matches the mid-tarsal break that's talked about. And to feel that, I mean, I've never found prints before till now, and the experience was just, it was so thrilling.
Wow.
If there's somewhere I can send this photo to you, I definitely like to share it.
Yes, absolutely. If you could send it to bigfootsociety@gmail.com, I'd love to take a look at it.
Sure. Sure.
And someone had pointed out, were you able to put something next to the footprint in order for scale of any size, like a dollar bill?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And there's several pictures of several different prints. I put my hand next to the one that's the juvenile within the adult print. I just put my hand next to it. Another one, I've got my keys next to it. Another one, I've got a chapstick. Kind of just no brainer. You might as well put something there for scale, right?
Absolutely. Well,
yeah.
I would ask Tim if you could definitely keep me up to date with what's going on with that area, because I'm going to guess there's going to be more things that happen, especially if there's been multiple events in that area reported in multiple places. Sasquatch Chronicles, Flash of Beauty, BFRO, and now you, Tim. Definitely reach out whenever you need to, bigfootsociety@gmail.com. But thank you so much for calling in, and hopefully this leads to something else. So
I'll keep you updated. We're going out there this weekend again. But thanks for doing a great show. Great job. And thanks for having me.
awesome. Great talking to you, Tim. Have a good one.
Thanks a lot. All right. Bye.
All right, Bigfoot Society, we've got the privilege of talking to Steven and Lizzy. They're a married couple that reached out to me from South Dakota. They've had some really interesting Bigfoot-related things happen over the years. So I'm going to go ahead and give the floor right over to you guys.
All right. Yeah, I was just getting done with work. I worked night shifts. We had a SUV at the time, and I was just driving home. I want to say it was close to about 3:00 in the morning, and just driving down one of the back roads by a bunch of farms and lots of trees and a couple scattered houses, and just saw something out in the distance over on the left side, and started slowing down because there's a lot of deer in that area, and it was much larger than a deer. At first I thought it was just a big black bear, but it was definitely on 2 legs, and it came right up to the road. I came to a stop, and about 3 or 4 steps, and it went all the way across the road. And on the right side of the road was a little hill that went up to a house and some trees and bushes, and it went right across and was just out of sight. So I sat there for a second, kind of just in shock and wondering what it even was. Made it all the way home, and I got my wife and our kids, and I was like, well, let's head back out there and let's just take a look at it. Take a look at the area and see if we can see anything.
Yeah, I knew it was serious because you never freak out over anything. Like, I've seen you around bears and mountain lions, and you called me when I was sleeping. And you were pretty panicked.
Yeah.
And that was not your norm at all. And when we drove out there, you didn't want me to open the car doors or anything. And that's when I knew it was like really serious. Like, we could see everything pushed down, like something heavy walked through. And I wanted to get out to see if I could find prints, but you were a little freaked out and you were afraid of it being there still.
Yeah.
I remember rolling down the window to try to get a good look at you. Even that kind of freaked you out a little bit. That was in New York. Potsdam, or was it one of the back?
It was one of the back roads going
Yeah.
from Potsdam back towards Herman.
Okay, so around the Potsdam, New York area. And how long ago was this?
It's when we were living in Norfolk.
I want to say 2013.
Around there, yeah. I'd say about 2013. Yeah, because we heard a lot of Bigfoot stories and stuff from friends in that area, but we didn't believe any of them. We thought they were just bear stories, to be honest.
Yeah.
There's a lot of bears in the area.
So this area that you had this sighting in, this is northern New York, way up there, right?
Yeah, right up by the Canadian border.
Yeah, you could see Canada quite often across the St. Lawrence River.
Now, when you saw the creature cross in front of you in your car, how far away from the car would you say it was, Steven?
I want to say between like maybe 25, 30 feet from the front.
Sure. Did you get a good enough look to notice any details, anything weird about the creature, maybe hair color or hair length, or how the head looked in any certain way?
I didn't really get much of a look for the head. It was definitely tall, darker hair. I want to say like dark brown, almost black. The hair was like maybe like 2 inches long, 3 inches.
Were you able to see anything about the arms at all?
They came down like just below the waist.
And if you were to guess like how tall the Bigfoot or the creature that you saw was, how tall would you estimate it?
Oh, it was definitely taller than our SUV. I'd say around 8 feet.
That area that you had the sighting, sometimes people after they have a sighting, they'll start like talking around to different people or seeing, have there been other reports in the same area? Was that anything that you did after that?
I did.
Okay.
I was absolutely fascinated. So I really dug into the whole topic. I had multiple friends say that they saw things cross the road, but I don't have permission to say their names or anything.
Oh, yeah, sure.
But almost the same exact area. One of my very close friends said they saw the same thing. You had a coworker catch something on a trail camera that was really up high. That was all he saw was fur, though.
Yeah.
And they were thinking it possibly was a Bigfoot because it was way taller than a bear, whatever it was.
Yeah, but they lived closer towards Potsdam area. His drill cam was about 10 miles from that area.
Is Potsdam actually north of the Adirondacks, or is it technically in the Adirondacks?
It's like on the border, like right above it in the north.
Yeah, just north.
But it is very close. Would you say half an hour at most? I'm not even sure if I'd say half an hour from the Adirondacks.
Yeah, half an hour, 20 minutes.
The thing I like about this particular one is that, and you don't hear this in a lot of them, is that, well, one, you got your family and you brought your family back, but not everyone actually goes back to check it out. That's really cool that you guys did that.
I think he was just trying to make sense of it, and I was just too curious. I remember questioning him, like, why didn't you get a video? Why didn't you get a picture? And he's like, I just froze. I couldn't think.
My phone was in my pocket while driving, like just looking at it and watching it as it goes across. It was fast. Like it was only a couple steps and it was gone.
And was it fast in the fact that it could make long steps and cover a lot of territory quickly, or was it actually moving fast?
A bit of both. It was almost like a jogging speed.
It's really interesting. Was this your first introduction to things related to cryptids and Bigfoot and all that, or had there been things before? That was it? Yeah.
Yeah, this was the first for me.
Yeah, I always watched like Monster Quests and things like that, but he really wasn't interested at all.
Okay, so ironically, the one who wasn't really into it is the one that saw it, and Lizzie's like,
yeah.
What are you doing? I've been training for this.
Literally. I think it was mostly my fault that we went back, to be honest. I wanted to go find tracks and stuff, and I don't know. Like, I think you were willing to go back, but I don't think you were thrilled about it. Yeah.
That's really interesting. That's an area I actually haven't talked to anyone from really northern New York. So I'll be curious to see if anyone jumps in the comments about that area. But anything else that we wanted to add to that particular sighting we had in the Potsdam area? I
don't think so. Just we had other people say, hey, don't tell anybody, but we've seen things too. Pretty much that was people had, once they realized you saw something, they're like, okay, I'll tell my story, but don't say my name, type of thing. Oh yeah, sure. Definitely. I know how that is. Half the stories I get, I can't even say on the podcast, to be honest. Yeah. They don't even want to be anonymous in the small chance that someone can track them down. It's wild, but totally understandable. Lizzy, do you mind sharing what you were able to experience on your side? Yeah, for my story, quite a few years later, we've moved to South Dakota since then. We're in the Black Hills of South Dakota. And if you know anything about this area, it's very drastically different from the rest of the state. It's very heavily wooded. They call it hills. I guess it's not mountains. It's very hilly. But for thousands of years, they've talked about Sasquatch or Sasquatch beings being in this area. So you see Sasquatch statues everywhere, especially in Keystone where I work. So I'm driving down 16 on the way to work. I would say it was this time of year last year. It was because I was leaving very early to go clean up the restaurant to open it for the season because it's a tourist destination. It's right outside of Mount Rushmore. And as I'm driving down the road, there's this one hill that has like no trees on it because of a forest fire. And I see at the very top ledge this very large Bigfoot silhouette. And it was sunrise, so it was like all pink in the sky. So I look over, I'm like, oh, Doll's Chainsaw Art must have put a statue up there. That's really cool. But as I was coming closer to that hill, it started moving. It turned and started to walk away. I was like, no. And I almost slammed on my brakes, but I realized there was like 5 cars behind me. I'm like, that could cause an accident. So I started just driving to work, and I was rationalizing the whole time. I'm like, it was probably just an animatronic because we're outside of a tourist town. And every single time I've passed that hill, there's nothing on it. And it was ginormous. But what got my attention was throughout this tourist season last year, I had multiple guests come to the restaurant and they would try to rationalize, I saw something, I heard something. It reminded me of like those Bigfoot shows. It sounded like an ape. I found basically a teepee of logs. I had more than one person tell me about this Airbnb they stayed at, and they found this teepee of logs way off in the woods behind their Airbnb and had a bunch of bones all around it, apparently. When you hear one story, you kind of almost brush it off, but when you hear multiple people, totally unrelated, totally different months, tell you these stories, you start listening a little harder. I remember there was more than one person like, oh, can you rationalize this noise for me? And they would describe it to me. Like, is that a buffalo? Is that an elk? Is this a bear? And I would have to tell them, no, that kind of sounds like Bigfoot. And it would go one extreme or the other. They'd either be like, oh my gosh, I thought it was crazy. Or, no, you're crazy. That's not a Bigfoot. You're supposed to tell me it's this or that. But I've had multiple, especially my native friends, tell me that Bigfoot is the guardian of the Black Hills, that he is there, that they've had sightings. And it's been very interesting, especially this last season.
How tall would you estimate that what you saw up on that hill might have been?
Probably close to 8, but he or she, it was a lot bigger than it was a lot taller than anybody I've seen. We have this one gentleman, he's like 7'2", and it was way taller than him. That's one of the reasons I also thought it was a statue, to be honest, because it was massive. I don't know, probably about 8 foot.
It sounds like you're starting to be known as kind of the Bigfoot person in your area. People are starting to come to you.
Maybe to a degree. I keep trying to talk to my one friend to come and talk to you, because his family is definitely more so than me, because we both worked at Rushmore for a bit. And any of these tourist positions we've had, tour guiding, we've had a lot of people just come up to us and try to rationalize things they saw here.
Okay, yeah. So you're tour guides at the Mount Rushmore area? So
we both worked at Rushmore. That's actually what brought us to South Dakota. And then after that, I worked as a tour guide, and now I help run a restaurant. But it's all right outside of Mount Rushmore, like walking distance.
That's awesome. Oh man, the stories you must hear must be crazy. I mean,
yeah. They're all so similar too. That's what gets my attention, is they're so similar. Just the monkey sounds that they're like, this doesn't make sense. There's no monkeys here, right? I'm like, well, there's not supposed to be. But
have you noticed any similarities? Like, do they ever describe about how they look? Are there similarities that keep coming out about the description, physical description of it?
I would say around 8 foot, tall and dark. A lot of people don't see, they just hear. There's a few people that I've heard that have seen things. I don't know. I know I'm still trying to contact my one friend to tell you their side, because the whole family has a lot of stories. Like they've seen juveniles and things like that. I don't know. I haven't got permission to tell their stories, so I don't know how they would feel about that.
Yeah, we definitely don't want to do that. Yeah.
Yeah. But as a whole, like there's medicine men that like pray to him here. They think of him as a brother. They think of him as another like a tribe. Like he's very important to them. Yeah.
Oh, that's really interesting. Does that whole area, South Dakota, North Dakota, Montana, is there quite a bit of Bigfoot influence in that area?
I would definitely say so. Like just the Black Hills in general, it goes from South Dakota to Wyoming. Does some of it touch? I don't think it touches the rest of it. That's like, it goes from Devil's Tower to like Rushmore area. It's like the length. There's always been stories here, even before the Lakota came here. The Mandane said that Sasquatch came from Spirit Mound, which is over by Vermilion. And then they were sent over to the Black Hills to protect it. And even like multiple tribes think of them as the guardian of the Black Hills.
Is Spirit Mound, is that like a Native American mound type setup?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a Native American mound. I believe it's in Vermilion. There's a lot of stories associated with it. Lewis and Clark even visited it. They were told that little people live at it. So they wanted to go see the little people, and they didn't see anything. It's pretty much the gist of the Lewis and Clark story. But there was, long story short, there was like a fight, and apparently this ancient tribe wanted to ask different spirits to come and help them with their fight. And they didn't, but they released 2 spirits. One was the Sasquatch and one was the little people. And the little people stayed near Spirit Mound. And Sasquatch went towards the Black Hills.
The area that you're in with the Black Hills, is it just Bigfoot that's weird there, or are there other weird things that you've noticed during your times there?
I've personally, I work in a haunted restaurant, I'll be honest. It's very, very haunted. We see orbs, we feel things. The place has been saged multiple times, but there's a lot of stories in the area. There's the Keystone Werewolf. There's one of my friends was saying that they saw a little person, but they didn't see much of it. It was just something dark and little, and it ran across with 2 legs. So it caught their eye. But again, I don't have permission to really say that story, so I don't want to go into too much detail.
Absolutely.
But yeah. But there's definitely, it's a very spiritual area. Like they believe that this, like the natives from multiple tribes, they believe this area is basically the Garden of Eden.
Really?
So, yeah, they believe this is where creation started. Like their creation gods are basically where Rushmore is. It was originally called 6 Grandfather Mountain, and they stand for north, south, east, west, above the sky and below the earth. And it's a very, very sacred area. Pretty much everything you look at or touch, there's a story behind it. So there's a lot of very interesting stories, especially from the tribes people.
So we built a huge monument on an extremely sacred area, is what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's a part of history class I didn't quite get. That sounds like, I guess we won't touch that one, but geez, guys, come on, what are you thinking?
Sorry.
that's really like ironic. Like I gotta get into my history. That's wild. I'm blown away by that fact.
Yeah, the land is still technically owned by the Lakotas. It's
okay.
They refuse to take any money for what was supposed to be their purchase price.
Yeah. So they can't even mow the lawn or trim the trees at Rushmore without the elders' permission. It's
wow,
kind of poetic, Joe.
That's wild. You talked about the Keystone werewolf for a little bit. Is that something that you can maybe share a little bit about, or?
Yeah, I could share a little bit. It's hard to find anything on the topic, but the gist of the story is there's a mine, Ingersoll Mine, and some miners went to, I think they were, I don't know if it was gold or quartz. I want to say it was quartz they were trying to get from the mine. And it was the early 1900s, I believe. And they were just brutally murdered by supposedly this werewolf. And the story is kind of hung with the town, but it's really hard to find a lot on it. Pretty much all that you hear is from the locals. They pass down the story. But some people claim to see basically a dog man or a werewolf in the area. And a lot of people think that it's basically a skinwalker, if not a skinwalker. I think it was like 30 people or something like that. I know it's been a while since I've heard the story. But
30 people
they were all,
that have seen it?
No, that were murdered in the I want to say it was like 30 people that were murdered in the mine, and they were like torn to shreds by the sounds of things. But it's kind of one of those stories it's all by word of mouth. It's really, really hard to find any stories on it. But supposedly there's an article in a newspaper somewhere, but I haven't been able to locate it. I just know people claim to hear what they believe is the Keystone werewolf, and they won't walk in certain areas near the mine because of it. I heard of people seeing something around Custer State Park as well. Same description, like a big wolf man of some sort. I don't know how to describe it. It's more, people are afraid, so they leave immediately. They don't stick around to see details or to find out more. That one definitely scares people a lot more than Sasquatch. It's hard to say because there's not supposed to be wolves in this area, but some people try to claim that there are.
Have you found that you've heard a few things from reports around the area? Is there a certain area inside where you are where the reports tend to keep coming from this one area, or are they just kind of spread all over the place in the Black Hills?
No, the ones that I hear on a regular basis, they're definitely in Keystone. They mainly come from an Airbnb, which I'm guessing it's the one that's towards Hermosa, but to be honest, I don't know. I just know it's near Keystone because I've heard multiple stories. Mostly they say they heard something, they smelt something that smelt rotten. They found this teepee in the woods that was made out of logs that were really huge, that there's bones scattered around it. But a lot of them aren't visual sites. There's only been a few where I've heard I saw something and it didn't make sense. Or my native friends that are very adamant, like, this is what I saw, this is what I hear this night and that night. This is what I hear almost every night. But when it comes to the tourists, the monkey noises is the ones that they're like, well, what animal makes a noise that sounds like a monkey? Can you tell me what that is? Because we're starting to think it's Bigfoot. And I usually have to tell them, well, I think it is. They don't like that answer.
Yeah, I'm sure they don't. Definitely, they probably just want to explain it away. But when they say it's like a monkey noise, have you ever asked, like, can you be a little bit more specific, like what type of monkey noise you're hearing? Or
I hear a lot of chatter, like that chatter that chimpanzees do and gorillas. I hear about that one a lot, and almost like the hooping and hollering. I hear about that quite often. Recent stuff was probably last fall because we run from spring to fall every year, and I'm just getting the place cleaned up and getting back into it.
So now you've got in the Keystone, Hermosa area, you've got Sasquatch sightings, but you've also have some dogman things around the area as well.
Yeah.
Is there anything else weird about that area or kind of out of the ordinary?
People think it's very haunted, and I didn't believe it until I started working there. I work at a gold mine, and it's from the early 1900s, and we get people all the time to see ghosts in the mine. I work at the restaurant end of it, and we've had, like, before I started working there, people would say that furniture was thrown, and that's when they started staging the place. I've only felt presences in that place or seen shadows. There's a well underneath the restaurant. They had this huge metal bars over it that were really heavy and welded on, and just vanished one morning. They don't know what happened to it. They've had ghost hunters in there, and they would catch orbs all over the place in certain areas. I know for myself, I joked at first. I was like, oh, whenever something go wrong, I'm like, oh, it's the ghost. But there was this one year where this fridge would not stop freezing all the beers, and it would drive me crazy. I thought there was an employee messing around with it. So I'm like, okay, this is my job now. Nobody touch this. And every day I would come in and they would be frozen. I'm like, I know nobody else is touching this because I'm the only one restocking it. I'm the only one touching anything in here. This is weird. So I joked. I'm like, okay, well, I guess the ghost did it. It was like a day later. Our camera guy's like, hey, you got to see these orbs that I caught on the camera. And sure enough, the orb goes in the refrigerator where the dial is to turn it down, and then it goes out the window. And we saw this on multiple days. He was bringing up all the videos. So it was pretty intense. But we've had guests tell us they see these three figures in the mine itself. Especially kids, they'll come up and they'll describe these three people. It's like, I think it's two gentlemen and then there's a lady. And they describe them the same way each time. I don't work with that end very often. But I hear from a couple people the stories. They're like, hey, guess what I heard from a guest today? But it's more of just things being weirdly missing or broken or seeing something very physical.
It's really weird when you talk to enough people and you start to, I don't know, a lot of people think that there are certain areas of the country where you've got like just weird stuff happening, right? Or window areas. Man, it feels like this area, like it's got some weird stuff going on for sure.
If you talk about it from the natives' point of view, this place is so sacred. They wouldn't even live here. They would just visit and do ceremonies here. It's totally different than now, but I think there's a reason for it. There's a reason they didn't want to live in the Black Hills. They just wanted to be on the outskirts of it and visit it whenever they needed to. There's only some weird stuff, that's for sure.
Yeah, that's a great point. I agree with you. If they weren't even like, we're not even gonna put a house up, and now we're going and putting restaurants up and putting up monuments and stuff. Yeah, we're probably gonna have some weird stuff happen. So let's say someone was to visit the Black Hills. What would you say are the coolest, like if you were to do a paranormal type weekend, what would be some cool stuff that you could visit in that area?
Definitely the mine, Big Thunder Gold Mine, for sure. I don't know if they're doing it this year, but in the past, they used to have like nightly walks where you could go in with a lantern and stuff. Can you think of any other places? Like, I know there's a lot of caves in the area, a lot of stories. Oh, Thunderbird, that's another one that you hear about. Not very often, but there's a lot of petroglyphs of it too in certain areas, especially towards Hermosa. Ingersoll Mine. There's a lot of like old gold mines and quartz mines. And a lot of them are attached with very spooky stories, especially ghosts. I think you can't go into Ingersoll anymore, but I know on Iron Mountain Road, there's supposed to be an abandoned town over there on some path. I'm still trying to get my friend because he's got a lot more stories than me, and his whole family does. And I'm still trying to convince him.
Well, yeah, definitely. If he does get to the point where he would like to chat about that, more than welcome to reach out. And anyone listening too, feel free to send me an email, bigfootsociety@gmail.com. But Lizzy and Steven, it's been really fun chatting with you guys tonight about an area I didn't really know a lot about, and it's given me some things to look into. So thank you so much for coming on the show and chatting tonight.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Just want to take a few minutes to say thank you to you, all my listeners, for listening to the podcast. Please take a minute to help out the show by subscribing on YouTube, making sure you hit the bell so you don't miss any notifications, and share the episode on YouTube with a friend. Also, if you're listening to us on a podcast, thank you so much. Make sure that you're subscribed, share the show with a friend. Really, it's all about sharing the show wherever you can. If you've had a Bigfoot encounter related to the following or know someone who has, please reach out to me at bigfootsociety@gmail.com or pass on my email. Here's a list. If you or any relative were involved with Bigfoot sightings in the late 1970s or talked to Kevin or Clifford with the IBIC, I would love to talk to you. Please reach out. And to share anything Bigfoot related from this area, if you've got anything else you'd like to share from the Mount Shasta area, I'm not going to decline that either. A special thank you to all the Bigfoot Society Patreon and YouTube channel members. It's your support that helps keep the show going, and I extremely appreciate it.